Hey everybody, Steve-O here from Movies and TVs on the Ball, and welcome to Mr. Movies Having Breakfast with the Breakfast Club. This film came out in 1985, and it was directed by John Hughes, written by John, I think written and directed by John Hughes. And I really like this film because I think not only, I think now we look at this film as sort of a stapler to the 80s. Stapler of the 80s, and it's so iconic. I mean, I've seen it, you know, your ragtag bunch of teenagers stuck into a facility for X amount of hours, and the film takes place in one spot. We've seen that a lot, and I think this one was sort of the one that kind of started. You had Molly Ringwald, who I think was in Pretty in Pink, and Emilio Estevez, who, if you saw my review of Mighty Ducks, he plays Coach Bombay. Anthony Michael Hall, who was in Weird Science, and I think um, the bully was played by Judd Nelson, who I think was in Steel, and he's also done a lot of voice work with Transformers movies. Anthony Michael Hall, from Weird Science, which I think came out maybe 2 years before this film, and then you had kind of the loner is played by Ali Sheedy, who I know from Short Circuit. So that was kind of a cool kind of thing, a connection. And I really think what makes this movie makes this movie great is that I think the actors, and I think the cast really makes this film work because you have sort of it all takes place around a Saturday of detention, and we have sort of a three I guess three different sort of class groups all together that are kind of there together, and we have the I guess if there's any sort of, and they're all sort of like, you've got Anthony Michael Hall, who plays sort of the kind of the loser kid, Marley Ringwald, the popular kid, uh, the tough guy played by Judd Nelson. Emilio Estevez, he does something with wrestling, so he's kind of the jock. And then you had Ali Sheedy as sort of um, the loner, and I think it worked. I think the cast in general all works together, and I think I feel like because this film takes place in such a small and in such a confined setting, we there's really good character developments, and I think the reason why there's a lot of good character developments is because John Hughes has really made it work. I think made the characters really developed. We see Judd Nelson sort of talking about how his father is kind of Judd Nelson's and Emilio Estevez's fathers sort of have very different sort of perspectives of how to raise their children. When you have Judd Nelson's father character's father being sort of like, kind of the abusive, hard, drunk kind of father, and then you have Emilio Estevez's father, who is very, has this sort of perfection, and I really like the kind of difference between those two characters. And then I think you had Molly Ringwald and Ali Sheedy as sort of two polar opposites of popularity. Molly Ringwald It's the popular girl, the one who kind of thinks she has her whole life together. Ali Sheedy is sort of the one, kind of the one that's the loner, kind of, but likes to keep to herself and kind of does her own thing. And I think just because this film works well enough because it has, I think because it's just it's it's confined in one room, and I think because each of these actors bring 150% to it, and they really develop pretty strong characters. I mean, um, I think Judd Nelson, I could really see him as sort of the bully, the geek, with Anthony Michael Hall. And if there's any, I guess, any antagonist in this film, that would probably have to be the principal or teacher Vernon, Principal Vernon, played by um, Paul Gleason, who was in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, or Trading Places, excuse me. And I saw him. He kind of refurbished the character in the Goldbergs, but I really think that he is probably the closest thing to an antagonist that we see. This is a really good movie. I think the cast makes it work. I think John Hughes is writing. He kind of can write teenagers in the way that they talked back in the 80s. I think it's a classic film. Um, Jay and I discussed Power Rangers, Saban's Power Rangers, and when we got to see the Power Rangers in sort of detention and them trying to get together, I really felt, or when they trying to kind of build up their friendship, it did feel a little bit like this film, but I think it really works really well. Um, uh, I think the cast works great. It's a classic film. Don't you forget about me because this movie's great. IMDb gives it a 7.2. 87% is the critic score and a 92% is the audience score for Rotten Tomato. I give it on my 1 to 100 scale. I'll give it a solid 97. I think it works really well. I think it works well because I think the cast really brings it, and I think John Hughes is writing because I feel like without John Hughes' writing in this film, I think it would be this film could easily go very hokey, but I think this is a great 80s film. I would put this with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but more, you could probably put this a little bit with a double feature with Perks of Being a Wallflower in a way, because I think those two films kind of encapsulate the both sort of the characters in um, uh, kind of misfits characters in a dramatic way. I think there's a little bit more edginess to Perks of Being a Wallflower, but this film looks is pretty good. So that's kind of my look at watching The Breakfast Club for the my first time reviewing it. What's your thoughts on The Breakfast Club? Did you watch this as a kid growing up? Did you grow up with this in the 80s? Have you watched this before? Have you seen this a million times? Is this a classic film to you, or is it something that you would have seen just caught on TV every once in a while? So let me know what your thoughts are. And as always, I'm Steve, and see you at the movies. Please like and subscribe. And don't you forget about me. Don't you. Peace.